I've heard that this can happen, but I've finally found a power bank that will discharge the Dwarf. So I have my Dwarf plugged in USB-C cable here to this power bank, and the power bank has an in and out port, so you can charge a phone from that port or you can charge the power bank. And in this situation, the power bank is drawing power out of my Dwarf into the power bank. It's 11 volts, 1.6 amps. And so my Dwarf used to be 4 stars, now it's, 3 lights with a flashing light. And so if you were to plug this in doing astronomy, it would actually suck power out of your Dwarf. And if the Dwarf was trying to do an astrophotography and stacking, especially in binning 1-1 mode, it would reduce power so much that the Dwarf would just shut down, which is what happened to me last night. So that's not great. Apparently the Dwarf's USB-C firmware on their USB-C power delivery chip is set to allow the Dwarf to export power. And really, the Dwarf should never be exporting power. The Dwarf should only be taking power in. Now you might say, but Jay, clearly that port is for charging the power bank. You shouldn't plug into that port. You should plug into the integrated charging cable in the power bank. And I've tried that, and if you look here, that little green arrow is pointing to the right. And so it is doing 12 volts at 1.6 amps out of the Dwarf into this power bank. And that really should not happen. All right, I have a different power bank. This power bank only does 5 volts, but it's USB-C in or out. And here you can see that it's taking 5 volts at 0.8 amps in, the little arrows are going this way, from the Dwarf. Now, the one thing I've found is that if you plug these power banks in while the Dwarf is turned on and operating, it seems to go in. But if you turn the Dwarf off, unplug the cable. So the cable's unplugged, the Dwarf is off. You plug it in, and in that situation, this guy is going in the right direction. So now you have 5 volts going to the Dwarf at almost 2 amps. You can see the arrows going to the right from the input to the output. And the Dwarf is now charging, presumably. Now I can turn the Dwarf on. The Dwarf is on, and the direction of power flow remains out to the Dwarf. Now I should not have to take a USB power meter with me to figure out which direction power is flowing. Power should always flow to the Dwarf. The Dwarf should never be used to charge other devices because that's just not what it's intended for. So I think this is a problem with the programming of your USB-C power input chip system. It should always accept power. It should never export power. I'm currently running the beta firmware 2.0.03, although I've seen this issue every so often, even before the beta firmware. In my app version, if it matters, is version 2.0.0 beta 65.